Hello everyone, welcome to NerdChat. So I was at C2E2 over the weekend in Chicago, and I went to a panel. There's been a recent issue lately about diversity killing Marvel Comics. And in the panel that I went to was on diversity in comics and TV shows, all that kind of stuff, video games, more. And the topic got brought up there again, and I want to explain why that's wrong. So, diversity is not killing Marvel Comics. That's not what the problem is. And it's a misconception that Marvel's making on their own part. And I am going to try to clear that up the best I can. So, for this, just to start, diversity is good. We do need that in comics, and they're doing a great job with it in some ways, but they haven't quite figured out where they're missing the mark. So, there's the issue with legacy. Legacy is what I was originally going to make a video about. So, think about when Batman died in the comics, or tossed through time. When he was gone, who took his place? Dick Grayson. And who else was more fit for that role than him? That he had earned that. He was the first protege. No one deserved to be Batman more than Dick Grayson did. When Barry Allen ran too fast and disintegrated into the Speed Force, Wally West took his place as the Flash. He took up the mantle. And that was earned. That was deserved. When that kind of stuff happens, that's great. Because we watched that protege be trained for years and study under that hero. They become, the most deserving to take that role. In Marvel, though, that's not what they do. Because Marvel doesn't have sidekicks, really. There's a few. There's, like Bucky Barnes. And it's not unheard of for that to be the case. But they have been replacing a lot of heroes. And not with people who seem to deserve the role. Or at least we don't realize that they are fit for it right away. So, the first example is Captain America. Right now there's two Captain Americas. So, Steve Rogers lost his super soldier serum. And Sam Wilson took over. Sam Wilson was Falcon. And he deserved that because he did fight alongside Steve as his partner. So that made sense. But then we can look at a couple other examples. So, Miles Morales becoming Spider-Man. People didn't have a problem with Miles being black or / Latino. We had a problem with him because our Peter Parker Spider-Man died. You can't see it right here, but right below here, right down there, I have the entire collection of the Ultimate Spider-Man run. So, when we read through all of that and watched Peter Parker die, we were like, who's this kid? Who's this kid who thinks that he gets to be Spider-Man? And granted, that's a huge piece of his arc. That is true. The whole thing about Miles is like, first he didn't want to be a superhero, and then became guilt-ridden because Peter died, and he felt that he could have done something about it. But I didn't know that right away. So, I just saw this guy running around as Spider-Man. I was like, what gives him the right to be Spider-Man? So, that's what bothered me about it, and I didn't give Miles a chance for a while. Then comes the case of, and granted, Miles, I do like him, I do, but I didn't get into him right away. I didn't give him a fair shot at first because I didn't know who he was. And I didn't care who he was because he wasn't my Spider-Man. Then there's Jane Foster Thor. So, we now know that she is Jane Foster. However, all we knew originally was that someone took up the mantle of Thor. And we didn't know who. We just knew it was a woman who was now worthy of the hammer, apparently. But we didn't know who that was. It wasn't until issue 8 we found out that it was Jane. And once we found that out, it was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's fine. That's cool. But that wasn't until issue 8. And you need to know, if you don't read comics regularly, comics come out monthly. So that's 8 months of us being like, who is this new Thor? And what gives her the right to be Thor? What makes this person worthy to just step in and be Thor. So we don't know. So at the end of a recent arc called Civil War II, Tony Stark is no longer Iron Man. So he's in a coma or something like that. He apparently passed on his mantle to this girl, Riri Williams, who is a young African-American girl who is brilliant in her own right. She totally is. And she has the intelligence and the know-how to be Iron Man. But we don't know anything about her. She just kind of showed up. And they tried to, give hints at her to, ease us into her becoming... She's Ironheart, not even Iron Man. Which, here's another problem with that. So she is not Iron Man. She is Ironheart. However, currently, even though Tony is not Iron Man, there is another Iron Man, who is Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom is running around as Iron Man. So she doesn't even get to really take over the mantle completely, because there's someone else who took up the mantle of Iron Man. It's not that she was going to be Iron Man, but you see my point. She hasn't taken over that role because someone else has that role, apparently. These were the problems lied. So they try to get rid of heroes that we known and loved for years and we're used to, and change things up. And they bring in these new characters, take over those mantles that have been held by those characters for so long. So Peter Parker is Spider-Man, Steve Rogers is Captain America, Tony Stark is Iron Man, Thor is Thor. And we haven't been getting the right resolve with what we want with those stories. So they did bring Steve Rogers back as Captain America, but not full Captain America, because he doesn't have a shield back. He left it with Sam Wilson. But at the same time, Steve is now a Hydra agent, and just took over Hydra and killed the Red Skull. So we didn't really get Steve back. This is still something different. And granted, that run is incredibly brilliant and very interesting. But we're not getting that hero back, at least not yet. Thor is on a quest as unworthy Thor to go figure something out. I don't know, I'm not reading it. And in the Ultimate Universe, when Miles Morales took over Spider-Man, Peter did not come back. Well, he did come back. But Peter did not become Spider-Man again. And there was a crossover called Spider-Man where... Peter did give Miles his blessing, and that meant a lot. But Marvel's missing the point of where the diversity issue is. It's not a problem that it's these diverse characters that we're not liking or something like that. I'm not having a problem for any of these characters because of their gender or their race or anything like that. We haven't been reading them because we're well, who are they? Why do I care? The proper way to do something like this, to introduce these new characters, is not just force them into a role that we're already familiar with, someone else being. They need to earn to be that hero. So you can't just toss someone into the shoes of Spider-Man or of Captain America or whatever. They need to work their way up to it, which is why DC does it right with having sidekicks, because those proteges eventually will take over those roles, and it feels earned and deserved and feels right. So it's one thing to say goodbye to a character that you've been reading forever. It's another to invite a stranger to take over their spot. And that's where it's weird. So Marvel, I think the best way for Marvel to introduce these characters, I'm all for more diversity, but also for more heroes. Make original superheroes. You can bring them in as a new hero that the Avengers have decided to recruit, and given time, as we learn to grow and accept that character through them being in other comics, when they get their own, they'll be oh yeah, I really liked him in that thing, so I'm gonna go check him out. Oh, I really liked her on the Avengers, so I want to see what her whole story's about. That's where it works, and that's where you can introduce those kinds of characters and get interest in them. But people aren't buying these comics because these aren't their heroes. So Marvel thinks that it's just well, they just don't like the diversity. Clearly that's where the problem is. No, Marvel, that's not it. It's not the problem with diversity. It's a problem with you tossing in characters to be the heroes that we've read forever, but we don't know who they are, and we don't accept them yet. And that's where the problem lies, and that's where the misconception is. And a lot of fans are aware of this, but Marvel doesn't get it. They haven't figured that out. So that's all I have to say on it. These comics are great, and there's a lot of them that I read, and I don't have anything against these new characters that have taken over, the mantles of old ones. But it took me a while to get used to them for some of their cases because they didn't feel right. And in time, they do, and the writing's brilliant on them. The stories are good. I don't have a problem with any of that, but it takes so long to get warmed up to the idea. So that's where the issue is. Like I said, that's all I got. I'm not going to take up any more time. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I will put some videos here that may also interest you. I don't know what they will be. Also, I'm going to start doing reviews for all the CW shows the night of their release through the rest of the season. Subscribe and hit that notification bell to get these videos when they come out. I'll talk to you guys all later. Bye.